Mr. Salavati. My name is Matthew Gabriele, and today I'm going to tell you the tale of The Wars, written by Timothy Finley. The Wars tells the tale of a soldier named Robert Ross, a second lieutenant in the Canadian Army. He is constantly forced to fight a physical battle during World War I. However, this isn't the only battle that Robert and his family is forced to confront throughout the war. In the wars, it is quite evident that Robert does in fact face a lot of physical battles. At the end of chapter 2, we first see Robert's first actual fight. On the 27th of February, Robert had finally fallen asleep, close to midnight. He hadn't fallen asleep because, just like animals, he had a sense the battle was soon to begin. At exactly 4 a.m. on the morning, the Germans set off a string of landmines ranged along the St. Louis. This was the first battle that Robert had faced, but it certainly wouldn't be the last. After this barrage of bombing, Robert is then involved in another physical battle. He was commanding a bunch of soldiers in a crater when a gas attack occurred. Luckily, he was able to save most of their lives. However, when the gas attack had passed, Robert realized that a German soldier had been overwatching them. Robert knew that the German soldier would let himself and the other soldiers live. After all the soldiers had slipped by, excluding Robert, it was now his turn. However, when Robert's turn to climb out of the crater occurred, what happened next was all so jumbled and fast that Robert was never to sort it out. He turned. He saw the German reaching over the lip of the crater. Something exploded. The German gave a startled cry and was suddenly dead, with his arms dangling down. Once Robert is at the top of the cliff, he realizes there's something worse. The German soldier had a modified Mauser rifle of the kind that used by snipers. He could have killed them all. Surely that had been his intention. He'd relented. Why? I believe that Robert holds on to this fact for the rest of his life. A man gave up his life to save complete strangers and enemies, and in return, he was killed. How is that for dramatic irony? And that's why I believe that this physical war will always be in Robert's head. In addition to the physical war, Robert is also confronted with an animal battle. In the beginning of the wars, Robert is inspired by a man named Roswell. The reason why Robert is so fond of Rodwell is because, just like his sister, Rowana, he has a love for animals. When Robert first meets Rodwell, he sees that there is a whole row of things, meaning that things is animals in cages, including birds, rabbits, hedgehogs, toads, and things. In addition, Rodwell's love of animals was so strong that he stated in the wars that any man whose love of horses is stronger than his fear of being absurdity is alright with me. Robert became close with Rodwell in order to bond a relationship that he once had with his sister, Rowana. However, Robert later finds out that Rodwell had killed himself. This is because Rodwell had been assigned to a company who forced him to watch the killing of a cat, which preceded was him walking into the middle of no man's land and shooting himself. I believe that this is the main reason why Robert decided to save those horses at the end of the book. In addition to the physical and animal battle that Robert is faced to confront, Robert also is raped and is faced with a mental stability battle. At the end of the book, Robert had been raped by his fellow soldiers. After being raped, Robert went back into his room and burned the picture of Rowana. He did this not an act of anger, but an act of charity. An act of charity for himself. As it reads here, having been stripped of what privacy he had left following the rape, Robert succumbs to the misery of war and does what he previously could not do. Let go of the memory of his beloved sister, who until now was a comfort to Robert in his time of crisis. I believe that all these battles that Robert faces throughout the wars is contributed to one resulting cause, PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. I was able to print off a couple things about post-traumatic stress disorder. I was able to get some symptoms of PTSD, which include assault, rape, and war, all three of which Robert confronted throughout World War I. In addition, it says that veterans coming home from war often have PTSD. However, with all the battles that Robert confronted throughout the war, I believe that PTSD set in during the war. Symptoms of PTSD which Robert had was feeling detached, which is the reason why I believe that he wanted to overall destroy Roano's picture, because he was eventually feeling detached. Feeling like you had no future. That's the reason why he may have tried to save those horses, because he just felt like his life was getting nowhere. He was going to die anyways. In addition, a symptom of PTSD is also having trouble falling asleep or staying asleep. This can be shown due to the bombardment that Robert faced during the war. Right before their first real attack, Robert already had trouble falling asleep, which showed that he had at least an early stage of PTSD. The document that I looked at on the internet contained a lot of treatments for PTSD. Since Robert was in the war, he had little to no treatment options, which resulted in all of these issues bundling up and causing the end result of him going absolutely nuts and saving all these horses just so that he would end up dying a slow, painful death. And now we are back to where we started. Just like when we first met Ross at the train tracks, we have gone full circle now. Now I would like to do a review on the book in general. There is no cushioning to it. It is very blunt and honest. And that's why I'm going to put on some protection. That's better. And now that I have this protection on, I'm able to tell you how this war book enlightened me on the true effects that war has on people, and how it's just not glorious and everything. How it will diminish someone's ability to think for themselves. How it will give them passion to stand up for what they didn't believe in going into the war. And how war isn't a beautiful thing. It just creates ugliness. Causes people to tear apart, like Robert and his mother. Causes people to go insane, like Robert's mother. She was completely sane before the war, but as soon as Robert joined the army, she stopped attending church, looked for storms, and completely lost faith in her life. However, I still think that it is a positive book that every grade 12 student should learn. That way they know for a fact that war isn't peaceful. And unlike the school board that I attend, this book doesn't cushion us. With like reading Romeo and Juliet and other Shakespeare novels that I do like, don't get me wrong. Because of this book being action-packed, I was eager to read and learn more about the life of Robert Ross.
Bugsy, Bugsy! I need you to film, Bugsy.